Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker. I'm with Firestorm, and we're pleased to have you joining us today as we discuss the accidental insider compromise. This is part of the Crisis Coach webinar series for 2017 that is presented by our good friends at the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Professionals. Hard for me to say. We also would like to have you become our friend. Facebook, we're Firestorm Solutions. You can follow us on Twitter at Firestorm Soul. Yes, we do have a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Keep in mind, our presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. This work product should be discussed in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, please do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. Our moderator, Dr. Michael Redmond, is not able to join us. She may be in later in the broadcast. She's the director of the Chapter of Contingency Professionals. We also have a co-sponsor on this as the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce.
Bill, I hear you ringing in there, so I'll just go ahead and jump in because it's about to come to me anyway, and I thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. This is Karen Masullo. I am your presenter for today. I do want to thank the Association of Continuity Professionals, the Eastern Great Lakes chapter, and those of you who are just in the New York and Northeast area in businesses in general. I see my friend Jeff on the call. Jeff, I'm coming to New York in late July, and I'm going to come and see you with my friend. So thanks to all of you for being on the call. And today, I'm trying to get my PowerPoint to move forward. We do want you to visit us at firestorm.com so you can watch past webinars on our YouTube channel. They're linked from there. You can also register, obviously, for future sessions. I do want to ask if anybody on the call is with a healthcare organization. As you know, the CMS preparedness rule goes into effect in November, on November 15th, 2017. If you do not go through the checklist of the 17 kinds of facilities that must comply with the new preparedness rule, you'll be out of compliance and you will lose your Medicaid and Medicare monies. So if you are a healthcare organization on the call, please just jump to the front page at firestorm.com, and all the information you need on some educational webinars and services is there for you. I am Karen Masullo. I'm our Chief Intelligence Officer and our Executive Vice President of a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm happy to be with you today. We're going to talk about the accidental insider. And the reason I wanted to do this session today is because a few years back, quite a few years back, maybe 10 or so, I wrote an article that talked about insider threats and the growing issue of the more we become reliant upon people accessing our technology, the more vulnerable we become as they become transient through our organizations. And so really that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at some examples in the news, and we're going to think about ways in which we can keep our organizations safer, at least through plugging up the hole of about 30% of vulnerabilities in this area that come from accidental insider threats. So last month we discussed natural disasters and what keeps you up at night. Today we're going to talk really about man-made disasters. We have a problem. And from here, let's talk about this graphic. This is a survey that we did of about 1,000 people last year. You may have participated through one of our webinars. And we asked, have your employees been trained on phishing? Because phishing is one of the first things we're going to talk about. And as you can see, about 48% said yes, but the rest, the 35% that said no, and the 17% that are unsure, really, that's 52%, and that's a problem. If 52% of employees out there don't know or have no training in what to watch out for in phishing, then no wonder our systems are being compromised. In our own organizations, we have clients, sophisticated clients, sending us messages that say, I'm not too sure about this email. What do you think about it? Now, that's great. I'd rather they send it to us so that we could look at it and say, no, if you look at the header, if you look at the source, you'll see that it's obviously a phish. But even the idea that sometimes people can't recognize some pretty obvious ones is frightening to me. The other thing is, and we'll look at this together, is I think all of us on the call have seen a phish that's pretty sophisticated. It looks exactly like the company or the bank where we do business. Some of the links are actually real, so that if we scroll over the links within the email, we see, oh yeah, that's my bank, until it comes to the one where it says, change your password here, and that's where the phish is. So interesting to me. So we need to talk about training. It's one of the five common vulnerabilities in a crisis, is the lack of training of employees. Next, we asked if you had an issue, could you contain the information or leaks in that crisis? And really, that unsure part should be combined with the no part, because if you don't know, it's a no. And that is a frightening number. So if 80% of folks know that if 50% of their folks get phished and cause a crisis of confidentiality, they're just not going to be able to handle it. And that is a stunning number to me. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to look at a few different things in accidental compromises. We're going to look at phishing. We're going to look at where leaks come from, accidental or not. We're going to look at when you just kind of stumble across something. We're going to look at how we deprovision employees once they transition from our organizations. And we're going to look at what happens when you're just walking through the office and browsing and happen to see something that you feel might need to be shared or accidentally shared. Now, before we do that, let's look at some recent data breaches. No matter the size of your organization, whether you have 5 employees or 50,000 employees, we all need to implement the same types of standards and best practices. We need to educate our employees. We need to set expectations. We need to check and verify that our employees understand our policies, our processes, our procedures, and our expectations. And we need to follow up to assure that learning has actually occurred. We cannot blame our employees for failing to do something we have not explained or educated them in regard to. We see some recent data breaches, however, and what I want you to look at here that I find most interesting is if you look at the reason, which is about midway down the page, you will see that many of these are malicious outsiders. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go forward. Malicious outsiders, but we also have a malicious insider at New Oriental. And if you look at Saks Fifth Avenue, that was an accident. Now, we put those accidents in a sort of a big bucket, but if you're Saks Fifth Avenue and you have a lot of transient employees in a retail environment, I'm not sure if it happened at the corporate level or the retail environment, regardless, you have a lot of people in your systems all the time, the chances of an accidental loss probably increase. based on the number and the type of business and the number of people who are interacting with your technologies. And that, again, wasn't accidental. If we look at these next ones, the GMO payment gateway, third party in Japan, that was an accidental loss. Again, we have malicious outsiders, and then the National Health Service was being credited to a malicious insider. And that was, as we all know, the recent ransomware attack, and we'll talk about how those types of things occur. So if you can stay up to date on where these types of issues originate from, what we see, and we have seen over the past 7 or 8 years, the number has stayed relatively stable at about 28 to 30% of the vulnerabilities that companies experience with breaches, data loss, or confidentiality challenges. About 28 to 30% have come from accidental insider instances, some of which have been malicious, internal sabotage, but an awful lot of which have been just accidental. I'll tell you a story. Last year, I was at our local hospital. I was helping a relative with some physical therapy and taking them to their physical therapy appointment. And as we parked in the parking lot in the line right behind, the visitor parking right behind where the physician's parking was. And as we walked to the hospital, we walked through that area where the physician's parking was and passed a particularly attractive Jaguar. And I was looking at the car because I like it a lot, and I looked down and there was a flash drive right outside of where the driver's door was. So I thought, oh, I can see what happened. The physician was getting out of his or her car and dropped some things they were carrying possibly, and maybe that's how this got there. So I picked up the thumb drive and I went into the hospital, dropped my relative off at their physical therapy, and then went to the information desk. And I said, you know, I found this. Can you tell me where your security office is? And someone said, well, we don't have a security office per se that you can talk to right now, but you can go down to the ER. They have a security stand there, and you can just talk to those guys. So I did that. I walked down there to the security guys down at that stand, and I explained that I'd found this flash drive, and I was concerned that there may be confidential patient information on the flash drive, or it could contain a virus, or it could do any other number of things. And the security guard took it and said, huh, that's interesting, and put it into his laptop at the front desk of the emergency room. And my instinct was to say loudly, no, don't do that, but, you know, I'm in an emergency room, and I did say, you need to remove that and work with your IT department to analyze what it may be in a safe way. But he didn't even think twice, is my point, about putting that in so that he could explore what was on that. I don't know how many HIPAA violations might have occurred because of that. And it's quite possible that some type of malware could have been introduced to the entire hospital system. If that doesn't frighten you, it should. And we really must educate everyone in our organization, from the CEO to the recent part-timer we brought in from a temp agency. We must have as a requirement of employment within our organizations a policy to perform our jobs without compromising the confidential data and information of our organization. And if people aren't willing to comply, they can't work in your organization. It's as simple as that. So let's look at some ways that we do see compromises in our data. And the first is that little fish. Fishy, fishy. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here that we can look at. And, you know, this one is, I think, pretty easy to figure out. I have a quite delicate question which touches directly to you. Don't be surprised from where I learned about you. I'm pretty sure right there most of us would stop and say, oh, okay, I can delete this. But many people would say, someone has learned about me. How? The matter is that I have received already a third letter from the person, unknown to me, which asserts that you are fraud involved. Now, if you haven't deleted it at this point, I'm very disappointed. And quite frankly, this was not deleted. Someone actually followed through on this whole process. He says that you made him transfer funds to your PayPal account under fictional pretext. However, at the same time, he specified your private data up to address. Now, I'm sorry, this is just so terrible. Now he is collecting signatures and planning to call the police. I advise you to download the information that he is sending to me. I have attached a blank with a copy of all his writings. And this actually was a successful fish. So I want to say to our employees, at the very least, we need to be able to spot the obvious fish. Because if you can't spot the obvious fish, then how are you going to spot those that are more complex? This one, I believe, launched a keylogger. And a keylogger is a program that runs in the background of someone's equipment, and anytime it records passwords, it records numbers when you put your credit card in. It's a keylogger. It logs what you're doing. Here's another fish on the left-hand side, and this one is a pretty basic one. It uses a logo from the company that you can lift from the company. It's a warning, your account's been compromised. Now, even though, if you can even see, there's a period after compromise where there's an extra space. Even a typo as small as that should be a red light. And with my own team, we do a significant amount of the content for Firestorm, and we're grammarian crazy. I mean, we are very careful to make sure that all of our communication is accurate, because even one small thing should give you an indication that there may be a problem. Now, it's possible that a mistake can be made on a period, but you should automatically be on alert. We have detected unusual activities going on your account. To this note, we have deactivated some features on your account for your safety. Now, in this world where we're all so busy and we're reading our emails on the go as we're walking on our smartphones, we may not pick up some of these types of things. You're reading so fast that deactivated looks correct, or you don't notice that extra on, or you don't notice the extra spaces where words have been removed and copied and pasted. So we need to just slow down a moment and take a little bit of time to make sure that we are aware of the information and process it. We're moving so fast today, we're unable to process information. And then, of course, it goes on to say, please click here to verify your account. It takes you to a website that looks like a Verizon website. And once you're there, it takes all of your information. So we're going to look at how to spot a fish, and this is a good little chart. You can use this when we publish the brief. In about 48 hours, we'll publish the brief of this session. You can use it'll be in that brief, and this is from ISPOpartners.org, and how to spot a fish. There's spear phishing, there's whaling, and there's cloning. And so spear phishing is a highly targeted form of phishing. It hones in on a specific groups of people or an organization. We see that on LinkedIn quite a bit. So on LinkedIn, we've seen a rise in adult-oriented spam. And that adult-oriented spam is targeted at senior-level executives, both male and female, on LinkedIn. And it's a great way to fish in a pretty big pond with some pretty high-powered people. The next is whaling, and it is a higher-level form of spear fishing, and it's in that catfish realm. I don't know how we got all these fish involved, but anyway, there's cloning, where you take a very legitimate email that you got from a legitimate bank or other organization and simply duplicate it once you've created your fake website and inserted your links. And this kind of a small graphic, something that you can customize or create for your own organization, is really helpful to your employees. So we want to look for links or attachments, especially from folks we don't know. There's a new trend out there, too, we're seeing, where you'll receive an email that has very bad language, really bad language. And it says, you owe me X number of expletive dollars, and or it'll be the reverse. Thanks for suing me. Here's your blank expletive money, and it'll have an attachment. And people are both greedy and curious, and they'll open that attachment simply because it's different. It's a different way of presenting it. Usually poor grammar and spelling, and now we should add to that strong language, request personal or sensitive information, a high sense of urgency and privacy, discusses confidential subjects like salaries. We're going to talk about that in a bit, and incentivizes threats or reward. I think we've seen an awful lot of people accidentally get involved in money laundering through some of these scams too. So we really want to protect people. Here's one that looks, pretty, it's not completely solid, but it's interesting. It says, we've spotted unusual sign-in activity on your account. We detected something unusual about a recent sign-in to your Microsoft account. Somebody signed in from Romania. If this was you, you can safely ignore this email. If you're not sure this was you, a malicious user might have your password. Please review your recent activity and we'll help you take corrective action. Please check out this document for further instructions. Microsoft's never going to do that. They're not going to say, please check out this document for further instructions. That's not going to happen. But this comes in looking like a very, it's got a Microsoft logo on it. It looks like a really solid email. And so the more sophisticated these phishing attempts get, the more challenging it is to help our employees spot them. But this was even more, this is more challenging. This is ransomware as a service. This email that came in of unusual sign-in activity, first of all, cites an impossible IP address, but your employees aren't going to know that. Your IT savvy folks will know that. And if you click on the link, it brings up a page that directs the victim to update their Google browser installation. And from there, they download an executable file that then launches the server ransomware. And you can infect in you can create, as we have seen recently, ransomware throughout the whole organization. We've seen ransomware used to lock all of the doors in a hotel, to lock all of the doors in a laboratory, with highly sensitive information unless the ransom was paid. So, and it's not just, you know, it's everyone in the organization. Snapchat is a sophisticated, you know, technology company, and their CEO leaked employee data after a scam. It looked like an internal request. It looked official. He passed it on to somebody, and he said, "Hey, the blank department needs payroll information. Can you go ahead and forward it?" HR department received something from the CEO. I said, "Sure, okay, we can do that." And that's how information gets leaked from the organization. More than 97% of phishing emails analyzed now contain ransomware. If this morning, knowing I was going to present a webinar to you, and we have a newsletter that goes out in the morning, we had some updates to do on our website, my normal morning, if I had logged into my computer this morning and I wasn't able to do anything unless I pushed a button and gave someone $150, I don't know, I might consider it. What's your policy? Do you have a policy? If you got up this morning and went to your computer and there was ransomware on your computer and you could not work, do you know what your company policy is on what you do next? And if you don't, you need to go ask someone, what's our company policy? We actually get hit by ransomware. Let's look at some leaks. Well, we know there's a pretty significant leak story in the news right now. And frankly, this doesn't have to be for the government. It doesn't have to be to a major news publication like The Interceptor, or a media publication, I suppose I should say. And it may not warrant the FBI stepping in and arresting the person. But this person is a very young person with a very specific political viewpoint and felt that they were doing something that needed to be done and did not consider the illegality or repercussions of their actions. And so all of us have millennials and the next generation from millennials in our organizations, and there's some, they live their lives in a manner that we must be savvy to and understand. Everything that they do is wired, and they always have been. And so the idea of accessing information is not a complicated concept. And the idea of sharing that information is not a complicated concept. These are people who Facebook Live is a daily experience. So we need, again, to make sure that we're communicating and educating. Now, that's a purposeful leak, but what about when it happens accidentally? Yeah, we have a huge Boeing operation here where I live in Charleston, South Carolina. This didn't happen at that location, but it affected almost all 36,000 employees. And a Boeing employee inadvertently leaked the personnel data of all of those employees. He accidentally sent a company spreadsheet to his spouse, who didn't work at the company. He meant to send it to someone else. He accidentally sent it to his spouse. And when you think about it, think about all of the times, you know, you're trying to send it to Kathy A in your email list, and Kathy B accidentally gets it. How many times has somebody written this back and said, oops, I think you meant to send this to someone else? Now, hopefully it's not terribly confidential information, but it happens, and in this case it certainly did, to the aerospace giant of our nation. The file shared had sensitive, personally identifiable information on 36,000 Boeing employees. It had everything, accounting department codes, salaries, everything that you could possibly want. in order to target a whole bunch of people. So we must be, again, cautious and careful. But if something like that should happen, what's the response? So everybody on this call today, you think through, if I accidentally sent sensitive, confidential information to someone other than the intended recipient, who would I notify? Would I notify anyone? That's probably the more important question. Because sometimes that your first response is the worst response. And if we don't recognize that an error has been made, we can't address it and correct it. Pretending it didn't happen is probably not the answer. There was a data breach at a printing company that leaked thousands of pieces of highly sensitive documents. An online security breach in a national printing chain leaked labor filings from NFL players to lawsuits against Hollywood studios. There were allegations of harassment. It was just a big hodgepodge of information that was leaked from a printing company. And the owner of the company said the breach appeared to stem from a third-party IT firm that accidentally misconfigured the backdoor protocols, essentially leaving a backdoor open in the system. And we need to think about this because most of us on the call are like, I wouldn't know if that happened. I wouldn't, would you? If somebody was configuring our servers after a relaunch, how would you know that? How would you know that had happened? We now know, okay, that's a question we have to ask, but how will we know the answer is right? So you have to be prepared should suddenly something happen and understand what your internal company's protocol is when there is a leak or a breach of some kind. Who do you notify? How do you work with them to move through next steps? This is an example of one of the things that was leaked. It was a detail on NFL player benefits, and as you can see, it's been redacted, but there was a social security number there. The next section we're going to look at is, well, would you look at that? This was actually for a client, and we do, as you know, predictive intelligence monitoring at Firestorm, and we monitor social media and other public postings, nothing private. And this was a public posting from someone in an office environment at our client. She posted every night about what song she was listening to on her playlist, and invariably would show a picture of her desk to show what she was eating while she was listening or whatever else. And it's blurry in this image on purpose because you could read exactly what's on her screen in the original image, and it's all customer billing information. This is an APAR employee. If you zoomed in, it's blurred on this image purposely, but if we zoomed in, we could actually see what the paper on her desk was and the confidential information in that communication. This goes on all the time. We see this on the internet all the time on social accounts where people simply don't understand that they need to check the images they're posting because there can be confidential information being displayed. This just happened recently in Magic's off-season plans may have been leaked in the agent's Twitter photo. So the this is the agent, and he posted a photo, and the plans are right back there, blurred out in this particular image, on the whiteboard. And sports enthusiasts had quite a heyday with that information. And then there are times where other things are leaked in a way that we just don't know. We didn't know it was possible. An Uber driver, and this happened in 2015, but an Uber driver noticed that he was updating some information when he was trying to upload a document. And what happened was, technically, he was able to see every document that was uploaded into the database, which included hundreds of driver licenses and other confidential information on drivers. Well, he posted that on Reddit, because that's where you share this kind of stuff, right, is on Reddit. And, of course, users on Reddit were like, well, I'm an Uber driver. Let's go see what I can find. And it became a treasure hunt of bad information. So should something accidentally happen, if you're in your organization, you're noodling around in a database, and you see something that you know you shouldn't be seeing, who do you report it to? And how do you follow through to assure that the seriousness of what you're seeing is being considered by the person to whom you're reporting it? We don't want to report someone and have someone say, yeah, we'll get to that, and never have it truly addressed. We need to follow through on our reports of anomalies to assure that they are corrected and addressed. And if you see information that you should not be seeing, never think to yourself, I'm sure someone else is reporting this. I'm sure someone else has reported this problem. You may be the first one reporting it, and you have a duty and a responsibility to do so. This is one of my specific areas of concern, because for years I worked for one of the world's largest career transition firms. So when a very large company was about to transition 10,000 people out of its organization, the company I worked for would come in and do help with the transitioning and crisis management. And invariably, as we would go through the checklist of things that we needed to do as we were transitioning employees, it was, how are we going to identify, where is the list, the inventory of what applications and databases each employee has access to? And do we have a mechanism for automating the deprovisioning or the turning off of those username and passwords? If we don't, how many labor hours do we anticipate it to take to turn off or deprovision all of those users from our system? If every employee in your organization has access to 3 or 4 databases that require different usernames and passwords, so it's not just email. Let's say you have some Dropboxes out there or some internal databases that are separate from the main, whatever main internal network you have. There may be special telephones or other services that need to be deprovisioned or turned off. And if each activity to do that takes 3 or 4 minutes, and you have 5 databases, you're talking about 15 to 20 minutes per employee. If you have 1,000 employees that are transitioning out of your organization, that's a lot of time. And that needs to be built in to your planning for how this will occur, when the notifications will be made. Even if it's one person, and you notify your IT or your CIO or CTO that this person needs to be deprovisioned, you must know at what time the deprovisioning is happening and how much lag time is needed before they actually are out of all applications. Because in some instances, just because you turn off an email box at the administrator level, it takes time for that to propagate through systems. And I know I'm not using the correct words, but I'm trying to, that does not automatically mean that that person has no more access. Additionally, we need to make sure that we're cleaning equipment correctly if we're reusing and redeploying equipment. If someone turns in a phone, we need to assure that that phone is not capable of still receiving text or messages or email even once deprovisioning has occurred, because again, there can be a lag time. In this case, a fired IT employee offered to unlock data that he had locked upon termination for $200,000. I don't know how many businesses on this call today can write a check for $200,000 to someone who's extorting money from them, but the American College of Education didn't anticipate having to do that when they fired their one of their IT employees. And according to court documents, he would only unlock their Google account, their Google Analytics and some other pieces of their accounts if the college paid him $200,000. And this is not unusual. We have disgruntled employees hacking reservations. Again, we saw doors locked. There's a variety of malicious insider threat going on in addition to accidental. And this generally may occur during a rough transition. So we have a disgruntled employee who's trying to internally sabotage. Sadly, a lot of people stay in their jobs while they're internally sabotaging, and they'll internally sabotage other people's work. So it's important to remember that half or almost half, 40% of your employees, if they were surveyed, plan to use data that has been compromised in your organization in their next job. Last, what would you do if an HR manager on your team inadvertently sent highly sensitive information, promotions, salary adjustments to all employees, and you just found out that all 1,600 of your employees now have salary information on each other? What would you do? You know, years ago I worked for a company where I walked in a room and two people who had access to very sensitive salary information were sitting and laughing and talking about what people made and how this one was way overpaid and that one never should receive that kind of money. And hey, can't we go in and change this just to mess with them? Those employees needed to be terminated immediately. But what would you do if that information leaked out in your organization? Did you know that 72% of employees in your organization say that they would share sensitive or confidential information under certain conditions if they were directed to do so by management, if they were authorized to receive it, if the risk was low and the benefit was high, if they could do their job better, they would leak information. An executive at an insurance firm sent out a document that contained confidential information, including Social Security numbers, etc., accidentally through an email blast. He went to grab one file to attach to the email blast and accidentally grabbed the wrong file. I don't know how that happens, but we know it can happen. He was terminated. The insurance company had a significant loss of revenue and suffered some pretty significant repercussions. How does that happen? Well, it happens again because we're moving so quickly, we don't see what we accidentally did, or information is leaked through stepping away from a workstation, failing to redact sensitive information, saving documents to the wrong destination. All of these things constitute risky business. So as we move forward, we just for our own purposes, remember that 1/3, about 28% to 30% of all incidents are caused by insiders. And many of those are accidental. Some are malicious. Sources believe that number to be much higher, actually. In the Verizon 26 study, the 2017 study, by the way, the half-year study is out if you're interested. But in the full 2016 study, 30% of phishing messages were opened by targets across all campaigns and all employee groups. 12% went on to click a malicious attachment or link. Train, train, train. When we think about are insiders or outsiders a higher risk to your organization, it's a trick question. They're both a risk to your organization. And Dr. Larry Poneman from the Poneman Institute says the pressure to be productive is causing employees to put sensitive data at risk. We know this. So we must train our employees in all of the different traits of non-hackable employees. Again, you can download this paper in about 48 hours from our website. And then we'll describe for you in that paper a cyber threat intelligence program that you can implement in your organization to help. We base it on 5 phases of activation, pre-action, onset, impact assessment, response and recovery, and post-disaster. And you can have an informational audit for your organization because this webinar is underwritten and supported by the wonderful people at the Association of Continuity Professionals. So just contact us confidentially at webinars@firestorm.com, and we will be happy to schedule an informational security audit for you. You can also download the paper as we have discussed. And again, our thanks to the Association of Continuity Professionals.
Karen?
I believe,
yes, Dr. Redmond is with us.
Yes. Dr. Redmond, would you like to say one thing as we close up today's session?
Yeah, the reason I was late getting on is I had a client that had a phishing attack, and they wanted me to go through and look and see was it something they should click on, not click on. They were giving us a call today because they it was really, really, really good. The people that attack them, very good, and they wanted to know how to deal with it. So, this happens all the time. And I think it was an excellent presentation. It's something that is so important. And I was one of my clients this week. I went through and checked all of their past penetration tests that were being done by a vendor that they had, and I looked at them and I said, these are impossible statistics. No one's this good. And after going through and researching the vendor, found out the vendor had never done any of the pen test. And all these so that's another thing for companies to look at when they're seeing the reports. Is it they were accidentally sending the previous reports and updating the date? It was a computer problem on their part. So looking at those things are very important. And finally, the last thing I think that's critical to look at is I had another client that had 100% of the people from the same company go through and pass no one clicked on any of the phishing emails, no one in the entire firm, prior to them ever having awareness training. No one clicking on it is a really high statistic. It's normally 8 to 12% at a minimum normally clicks without awareness training. So those are things to look at too. When things are too good, there's a problem.
That's a great point. That's a terrific point. Dr. Redmond, are there any events or anything coming up?
Yes, we do. We have several things coming up. We have a webinar coming up that's coming up in July. Anyone that wants information on that, they can email me personally at mredmond@efprgroup.com, and I'll be glad to we'll send them out the link to that. We also have a meeting coming up in Buffalo the 3rd Wednesday in July, and we're going to have a panel that's speaking about events they've had. We'll have people from Wegmans, from Canandaigua National Bank, from M&T Bank. Different firms are going to be on the panel speaking about problems they've had, how they dealt with it, how did they deal with the crisis, how did they personally do it, did it work, did their plans work, did they not work. And then in September, We are having an all-day conference. We encourage people to sign up for that. Our members come free. If someone is not our member and they choose to come, it's $65. We encourage them to come. It's an all-day event, 8 continuing education units, breakfast, lunch, and reception afterwards, all included for $65. And again, they can reach out to me directly at mredmond@efprgroup.com or my phone number, 585-340-5187. And I want to thank you again. As always, this was excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm sorry I was trying to get back to your slide, and
that's okay.
I didn't have your email here like I thought I did. I'm going to add that. I really appreciate your joining. I hope your client and things are working out. If anyone has any concerns or challenges that they're facing, please reach out to Michael Redmond, or you can reach out to Firestorm at webinars@firestorm.com. Bill Baker or myself will be happy to chat with you. And thank you all for joining today. I'm sorry we went just a little, my fault, I talked too much. But thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone. And this will conclude our session for today. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. It was excellent. Thank you very much.